guys, hope all is well. Not all of our St. Thomas group can be with you, so we decided to be with you in video and in spirit.
So we're going to talk about our CDI project that we tackled over the summer and well into this fall. That's actually why some of our members can't be with us today, is because they're doing CDI. They're doing the CDI project instead of coming to CDI. So we'll have more to report after Friday night. Those of us who are here are happy to be here with you. Our project is titled CAST, C-A-S-T, CAST, and it stands for Co-op at St. Thomas. The plan was that we would have a market on the grounds of St. Thomas and Isle of Hope the first Friday of the month in September, October, November, and December. We wanted this to be a kind of a combination of a farmer's market and a festival. And so we had planned to invite different vendors. We wanted to have food trucks, artists and artisans who were local, as well as locally grown and caught food, shrimp guy, crab guy. We decided that we didn't want to have any charge for vendors to come, and that instead we would have a featured charity, and we would ask our vendors to donate toward the featured charity, and anybody else who was there could also donate to that. We decided in this that we would use the shape of the parish model. We found when we were doing interviews, we realized that St. Thomas is known for our hospitality, and it's one of our gifts. And so we wanted a way to capitalize on that gift. And one of the needs that many people expressed in the parish was they wanted to attract new people to the church. And so we chose Shape of the Parish with this project because we wanted to think about the different rings in that model, from all the way outside of the church to vicarious, to Christmas and Easter, to sacramental, to apostolic. And we wanted to find a way to build bridges from all the way outside the church into the heart of that model. And we thought that CAST would be a way to do that, a way to attract people from outside the church and give them exposure to our hospitality and to some of the things that we have going on here at the church.
We just started with data gathering. First, we used the 3 interview process. Then we collapsed the data from the answers and divided it into affinity groups, making it easier for us to focus. We determined 2 primary areas of focus. One was, what are our strengths? And the second was, what areas need improvement? We wanted to be able to benefit our parish, benefit our community, and to benefit others beyond our community. We felt like attracting new people was important, and to create that bridge from the project or the event to the pew. And we also want to create opportunities for parishioners to be more involved and be able to live more fully into their baptismal covenant through their participation.
We did a survey for the whole parish and invited everybody to participate. We had overwhelming response. I believe we had about 40 surveys turned in.
Pretty close.
And really, there were a couple of concerns expressed, but they were things that we were able to address with the planning committee and the task force as we went forward with it. So we really did feel like we had buy-in from the whole parish before we tackled this. We had the vestry support. We had the data from the survey that we presented to the vestry and then presented it back to the parish before we even really began working in earnest on all this.
And finally, it was time to get the work team together, so we recruited people that we felt had the appropriate skills and obviously the interest to do this and do the actual work of getting it done.
I think one of the most positive things was the focus group, because we very clearly wanted to bring in people with different expertise. We had attorneys there, we had real estate agents there, we had people in and out of the community that we felt could give us some insight, and they did.
So by the time we were ready for our first cast, we were generating all kinds of excitement in the parish. There was such a high level of energy and excitement. We were even starting to see signs of energy and excitement in Isle of Hope in the neighborhood. And then what happened?
Along came Dorian.
That's right.
Hurricane Dorian.
Mandatory evacuation for Chatham County. So we pulled the plug on the first one. That was disappointing. But we met again after the failed first attempt, thanks to inclement weather. And we made sure all our ducks were still in a row. And then October rolled around and we had our first event. Tracy was in charge of a lot of the logistics for that first event. Tracy, why don't you tell us about that first cast in October?
Well, for starters, it was 150 degrees.
It was.
Other than that, it was, I mean, we had loads of help. People came and stayed all day helping, taking down, cleaning up, helping in whatever way they could.
So
a lot of support.
Had a lot of different subcommittees.
Well, we had setup. We had someone in charge of the vendors. We had logistics. We had cleanup, music, children's activities. We had someone in charge of the featured charity, transportation committee, hospitality too.
I thought it was neat that we learned from one to the next. We're pretty focused about that. We had a meeting where we talked about, okay, what went right, what went wrong, what can we do differently, sort of after action review. And we got a lot of information out of that. And I think we were able to make some real improvements, and that's going to be something that we'll do, along and along as we go through this process.
One of the things that I thought was so cool about that first event was that we were very intentional about drawing in people of different levels of involvement in the parish and asking them to help us put this on. So it wasn't just the same old people who do everything else around here. We went out, the task force planning committee went out and tapped people to try to get them involved. And so for our welcome tent, we had one person at the welcome tent who'd grown up at this church, but then we had two other folks who were, one had come back fairly recently and another who was a relative newcomer.
And they are still attending.
Yeah, and they've gotten a lot
Regularly.
more engaged than they had been before we asked them to help.
And they had a lot of energy and enthusiasm around doing their tent. I
Yeah,
thought.
they
I mean,
decorated it. They ordered
had their
decorations.
kids involved.
Yeah.
There were other families, not from our church, but from the island, who they were coming in droves. Kids had other kids to play with.
That was my other favorite part of that first event was looking around and seeing, there were several bikes that people had ridden up on and seeing this whole cluster of golf carts that people had driven over on. I mean, it was exactly how I had imagined it. And there are very few things in the church that turn out kind of as I picture it. Usually something goes sideways or it's just different, and that's just a part of the organic nature of the church. But this was exactly how I had imagined it, with all of our work and energy and creativity. And then to go around back and see that there are people painting faces for the kids, and there are 37 children on our playground. It was just phenomenal. And you have another story, Tracy, about some folks who came to that very first cast.
I do. There's a lady that I believe has lived at Isle of Hope for a while. And she came into the kitchen and introduced herself to me, and she had 2 kids with her.
There are 2 grandchildren, I know.
And so she introduced her. I introduced myself, and I said, "Well, welcome to St. Thomas." And she said, "Well, these are my grandchildren, and they say this is their church, and this is where they want to come to church. So I guess this is my church now." And from what I understand, they have been back.
Yeah, they've been coming to
So-
church. Their parents came to the newcomers gathering that we just had a couple of weeks ago, and they were all 4 of them were sitting in the pew this past Sunday. I don't think I've seen the grandmother yet, but I have seen the parents and the granddaughters have been.
We're going to
have
get the
been
kids to attract.
Well, yeah, that's our new evangelism strategy. I think.
Didn't the grandchildren actually play with the music with School of Rock?
Yes,
With
yes,
the
yes,
music event.
yeah.
They were part of the entertainment.
They fit right in.
We've had 2 events so far, and we've gone through. And what are some of the things that we found that were challenging that we may have to work on?
The lighting, we had the time changed, and so it got dark, and we had some lighting, but it wasn't quite adequate. So we have, hopefully by Friday,
We're just gonna add more lights to the,
The power pole.
To the
Yeah, the
pole,
power
and
poles,
additional
yeah.
lighting for the,
Yeah.
basically for the entire campus.
we have struggled a little bit with volunteers after the first cast. So that has dwindled a little bit, not horrible, but that's something that we're going to have to focus our efforts on for in the future. And we also realized our hours were 4 to 8, and we just realized that was a little bit too long. So we have shortened the hours from 4 to 7. So now our 3-hour event.
We also continue to have problems at both of the events we've had so far. We've had problems getting traffic to the welcome tent. And we've gone, I think the first one, we didn't really have adequate signage. We finally just went and got some butcher paper and wrote free stuff on it. So we had a lady in the parish she's in her 90s, and she said she couldn't do anything, but she did have these cookie recipes that she used to bake for the USO, and she can't use them because they make 500 cookies. And so she volunteered to bake 500 cookies for the first cast. So we had all these free cookies and lemonade provided. We didn't have a sign, so people didn't know what it was. And so then the next one, we tried to move the welcome tent, because the point is we're trying to drive people toward the welcome tent where we have a lot of our literature about upcoming events in the life of the church. We have a little brochure. We've got mood cards with our service times on there. And so we're wanting to, I think, get that into people's hands. So we moved to the location, the last one, and we still just didn't see a whole lot of traffic. So at this next one, I think we're going to play around with where that's going to be. We've got a sign now that says St. Thomas Episcopal Church.
hearing y'all talk, you know what's most interesting to me? Starting this whole thing, my biggest fear, because we had been told that vendors would not come and participate unless they sold X amount and had, a certain amount of people walk through, and that's something that we really have no control over. We have control over getting other people to help us, and that was my biggest fear. And honest to goodness, I have not heard of one complaint, serious complaint. I mean, from a vendor. They've asked, maybe can you have a little bit more lighting, but nobody has said I'm never coming. I mean, they've all returned, and we've added more, which I think is very encouraging.
Yeah, the vendors were a surprising piece for me that I didn't expect either, because I like to go around and talk to the different vendors at each cast, and they all have different stories about why they're doing what they're doing, why they're selling what they're selling. But for a number of them, it's either a passion or they even see it almost as a ministry. We have the auspicious bread people who are getting ready to move into our neighborhood over in Sandfly. And they talk about really being so grateful for our cast event because it gets them out into the community and it reminds them why they are doing what they're doing, waking up at super early hours and making all this yummy food. But they get to see their customers in a different way than they do inside their shop. I think the whole plan was that we would try it and we would see what happened. That's what we kept saying to the parish over and over and over again, is let's just try it and see what happens. Just going back and looking at what our hopes were for this. When we talked about this with y'all in May, what we said we hoped would happen would be an increase in community awareness about St. Thomas. We wanted to create a fun gathering place for our neighborhood community. We wanted to offer children's activities. We wanted to support local artists. We wanted to provide access to fresh, locally grown or caught food. And we wanted to feature a charity to raise money and awareness for them. And I really think that we have achieved all of those hopes in this. And the other surprising thing to me is the energy that has been generated in the Isle of Hope community about this. We've had so much free publicity. It's just people have been sharing on their Facebook pages. We had the Isle of Hope news guy just kind of randomly stop by one day when we were trying to figure out how to get information in the Isle of Hope news, and he wrote a whole big article about us before we started. A lot of the vendors are promoting it now. There's just a lot of excitement out there about it, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds.